Hey there, everybody. It's Kelly. I want to welcome you back. I'm going to be reading The Talented Clementine today, and it's going to be chapter 7 to the end. So all you have to do is thank yourself for coming and take a big, deep breath. You can take your arms up and do balloon breaths if you want. Breathe in, and then blow it out. Sometimes I do 3. If you want to do another 2, we can. Breathe in. Arms up to the sky. Look up at the sky or your ceiling. And then exhale. And then one more. Breathe in. All right, this is the best one yet. Let everything out. Good. All right. And now all you have to do is sit back and relax and listen to Clementine. It's a great story, and it's going to be a great conclusion. Alrighty, here we go. Alright, we're on chapter 7. Chapter 7. Alright. Chapter 7. Here we go. I showed Margaret my new sneakers at the bus stop Friday morning. Oh yeah, she said. She fake yawned. Oh, I had a pair like that when I was a little kid. Sorry, fake yawns always make me real yawn. How about you? Does a fake yawn make you real yawn? So Margaret said, green is the dumbest color. That Margaret. When I got on the bus, I hid my feet under my backpack and looked out the window for the whole ride. There are 94 street lamps between the bus stop and the school. In my classroom, a surprise was waiting. We had a substitute. Mrs. Radio, I call her. That's because she always says radio. Also, okay, fine, because I can't ever remember her name. It was a good surprise for 2 reasons, though. First, because when she read my teacher's instructions, she said, I'm sorry, but we're not going to be able to have a run-through of the last acts of the talent show. It will be a miracle if I can even figure out what the heck we're supposed to be doing for classwork today. The second reason for that was that seeing Mrs. Radio in the front of the room gave me the most astounding-ish idea of my entire life. I raised my hand. Yes, Mrs. Radio said. I need to go to the principal's office, I told her. Rightio, said Mrs. Radio. Substitutes don't ask you why about things. So I walked down the hall, which was very hard because my new sneakers wanted to run, and I knocked on Mrs. Rice's door. Knock, knock, knock. I have new sneakers, I told Mrs. Rice. I see that, she said. Do you have a note? Nope, I just came to tell you that tomorrow night I'll be sending in a substitute. A substitute? Right, a substitute, like my teacher sent in a substitute today. I'm sorry, but there are no substitute students. But why not? If a teacher can have a substitute teacher, how come a kid can't have a substitute kid? Mrs. Rice looked at me for a long time. Do you know, Clementine, that no one has ever asked that question before? And it's a good question, an excellent question. I'm sorry, though, the answer is still no, but I'm going to need a little time to come up with an excellent reason for you. Oh, so am I all done being here? I asked. You're all done being here, for now. After school, I brought my old sneakers with the new tappy bottoms up to Margaret's apartment. All right, I'll teach you a very easy routine, Margaret said. But remember, you have to do everything I say. You're 8 and I'm 9, so that means I'm the boss of you. Which is a rule I don't like very much. Well, what about Mitchell, I asked. He's older than you. Is he the boss of you? Mitchell is Mitchell, Margaret said. He can't be the boss of anybody. Well, what about my parents then? I guess they're the boss of all of us. Nope, Margaret said. My mom is way older than your parents. She's the boss. So you have to do what I say. Sometimes that Margaret makes me so mad. I tried one more thing. Oh, yeah? Well, what about Mrs. Jacoby on the top floor? She's about 100, and I think that's older than your mother, so that makes her the boss. Margaret actually looked stumped for a minute. I don't know, she admitted. It's too hard to tell with grown-ups. Then she brightened up. So we'll just stick to me being the boss of you. I thought about the talent show and about me being the only one without any talents. Okay, fine, I said, for today. Margaret put on her tap shoes and I put on my sneakers with the bottle caps. She rolled up her rug and started tapping around. This is called Shuffle Off to Buffalo, she said. And I am extremely wonderful at it. Just do what I do. Except she did 4 million things at once. Head high, spine straight, arms floating. Big smile, Margaret said. Flap, flap, step. Step, ball, change. Shuffle, change. Her feet were moving so fast, I couldn't even see them. But I went over to the floor to try it anyway. Let me tell you, a shiny wooden floor is very slippery when you have 24 bottle caps glued to your sneakers. I took one step onto it and skidded right into Margaret's dressing table. Perfume bottles and hair clips and brushes and rings and ribbons went flying through the air. Margaret made a face that said, Clementine, you are hopeless, which I already knew. But then, while she was picking everything up, she surprised me. I guess you're not meant for tap dancing, she said, but we still have a little time. I'll keep trying to think up something else you could not be so hopeless at. I think Margaret might be a little empathetic, too. Thanks for the lesson anyway, I told her. I changed back into my new sneakers and went outside to where my dad was finishing up with the ivy. Maybe he'd noticed some really great new talent today. But before I could tell him the bad news that his daughter was a failure at tap dancing, my brother came outside with my mom. He ran over to us and had tried to pick up my dad's clippers. Dad said. Sorry, bud. Not for little guys. Cabbage screwed up his face like we were in for a real whale. So I quickly stuck some ivy in my sleeves and down my neck and waved my arms at him, and I went staggering around crying. Help, help, I swallowed some ivy seeds. This made him laugh so hard he forgot all about the wailing. Now that, my dad cried, see, there's another talent you have, Clementine. Nobody else in the world can make your brother laugh like this. Dad, I reminded him, that's not something performed on a stage. And then I remembered Joe. Hey, Mom, I said, could Beats still have an accident? First of all, honey, your brother's name isn't Beats. And second of all, what do you mean, an accident? I mean, he doesn't ever need diapers anymore, right? And even if he had heard a really loud sound, like clapping, he'd be okay with that, wouldn't he? Oh, no, he's pretty safe there, Clementine. You asked the most interesting questions. Then she dragged my brother off for his playgroup while he was still laughing about the ivy. I thought about the other part. My teacher probably wouldn't make me put a leash on my brother, but I wasn't so sure about Margaret's teacher. Margaret's teacher really liked rules. Do we have a leash? I asked my dad. A leash? No, of course not. Why do you want one? Do you know anybody else who does? I said. I just need to borrow for a little while. Well, actually, I've seen a leash in Mrs. Jacoby's storage compartment from when she had that Dalmatian. You could ask her. My dad knows everything about everybody in the building, and he's always saying it's a good thing he can keep a secret. But Clementine, I don't think Moisturizer would like that. Dad, I know that. I would never put a leash on a cat. Chapter 8. At breakfast Sunday, I reminded my parents about the talent show. You're going to be there, right? It's 6 o'clock. You're going to be there, right? Oh, honey, of course we'll be there, my mom said. We're going out to dinner tonight, but that's much later. You know, we haven't seen your tap dancing routine yet. Do you want to practice it for us now? Oh, I'm not doing that anymore, I told my parents. I've got something better, something I'm more talented at. More talented at? Let's see what that is. My parents asked me what it was, but I told them it was a surprise. You're going to love it, though, I promised them. Then I brought Beansprout into my room to practice. Once upon a time, there was a guy named Elvis, I started. His job was to sing and dance around until girls fell on the floor, grabbing their hearts and wishing to marry him. Then I pretended to play guitar and sang the first line of the Hound Dog song, and that was it. Squash went all hysterical, laughing so hard I thought he might spit up his Cheerios. We first found out how funny my brother thinks this is about a year ago. I had seen that Elvis guy in an old TV show with my parents one night, and the next day I did the act for spinach, and he cracked up. I didn't know what the second line of the song was, but it didn't matter, because whatever I sang next, cracking at the top, yogurt in your shoes, it made him laugh even harder. Now, my parents call my Elvis act the old standby. Whenever my brother's in a bad mood, they call me in to perform, because it only works if I do it. If my parents try it, he just stares at them as if he's trying to remember who they are. Once Margaret tried, and he ran into his room and hid under his bed. I had to drag him out by his feet. Hound dog, I sang again. Doobie doobie curtain. Carrot flopped onto my bed. He was laughing so hard, tears squirted out of his eyes. Then I got the leash. Sorry, Margaret's teacher might make you wear it, I told him, but don't worry, it's not for your neck. I buckled the leash over his overall straps in the back and waited to see what he thought. He got up on his hands and knees and said, "Arf, arf." No, you're not a dog, I told him. Grrr, I'm a dog. And then I saw what a wonderful idea that was. Okay, fine, you're a dog. Just remember that tonight you're a dog who thinks Elvis is funny. We practiced with the leash for a while, and that went great. And then, while Potato had his nap, I practiced saying, "My act is called Elvis and the Laughing Dog." And that went great, too. Just before 4 o'clock, I reminded my dad that I needed a ride to rehearsal. Oh, and Onion needs to come too, Dad. First of all, Clementine, your brother's name isn't Onion. And second of all, why does he need to come? So I had to tell my dad about my act. But don't tell Mom yet, okay? It's going to be a great surprise for her. No, I'm definitely not going to tell your mom, but we're also definitely not bringing your brother to that rehearsal, because he's definitely not going to be up on that stage on a leash. But he loves it. He thinks he's a dog. Trust me on this. It's out of the question, sport. But, no buts. Now get in the car. It's almost 4. Then I made a big mistake. I got into the car. I was thinking so hard about how this was the unluckiest day of my life that I forgot to think about how much unluckier it could get if I went to the rehearsal. When I walked into the auditorium, I saw Margaret's teacher and Mrs. Rice sitting at the side of the stage on tall director's chairs. I tried to hide, but Margaret's teacher saw me. She looked down at her clipboard and frowned, then yelled so loud all the kids in the auditorium stopped what they were doing to listen. Clementine, I don't seem to have you listed here. No matter, we'll fit you in. What's your act? I went over there and I whispered in her ear that I didn't have one. I hope the kids watching, though, thought I was saying I couldn't choose one because I had too many talents. What do you mean you don't have one? Margaret's teacher yelled, even though I was right there. Okay, fine. Maybe she didn't yell it, but all the kids were listening so hard they heard it that way. Hey, Clementine, one of the 4th graders called out. Your face looks like it's burning up. Maybe that could be your act. About 1 million kids laughed, even though he was N-O-T, not funny. But he was right. When I get embarrassed, my face gets red and so hot. So I didn't yell anything back to him. I just stood there with my red, hot face hanging down. Mrs. Rice called me over. Come sit beside me, Clementine, she said. You can keep me company during the rehearsal. So I had to sit in between Mrs. Rice and Margaret's teacher, right there at the side of the stage where all the kids could see me and know that I had no talents. The first act was called a dozen Doozy Cartwheelers. 12 kids lined up, 6 on each side of the stage. Wait, I yelled. I ran into the gym and dragged a tumbling mat back into the auditorium. I placed it on the floor in front of the stage. Then I got some of the dozen doozies to help me. Pretty soon, we had all the mats piled up. Margaret's teacher was glaring at me. She tapped her watch. They're going over, I explained. No matter how they start off aiming, some of them are going to go over. And they did. At least half dozen of the Doozys went flying off the stage and right onto those mats. As soon as we got those kids back up and checked for broken bones, I saw something else with my amazing corner eyes. "Stop!" I yelled. Then I ran over and grabbed a handful of saltines from one of the third graders just before they went into his mouth. "You're up next," I reminded him, "and you're whistling Yankee Doodle Dandy. No crackers." When I got back, Margaret's teacher gave me a look that said she was going to remember all this nonsense when I got into her grade. But Mrs. Rice gave me a thumbs up. "Thank you, Clementine. Those crackers could have been a problem." And you will not believe what happened next. Margaret's teacher apologized. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm a little antsy tonight." I wanted to stick around to hear about why she was antsy, but just then I noticed that the super-duper Hula Hoopers had been hula hooping for a while. I went over and asked them how long they were planning to go on. The girl on the right said, "I once went for 5 hours and 13 minutes. The girl on the left made a face that said, "Oh, that's nothing." "Well, you need to have an ending tonight," I said. "There are a lot of acts after yours." I borrowed the Jump Ropers CD player and explained about how they could hula hoop to music and then STOP stop when it was over. And I didn't even get to sit down again for the rest of the afternoon because everybody needed my help for something. Finally, I had a chance to practice their acts. Finally, everyone had a chance to practice their acts. I went over to Mrs. Rice. "May I go into your office and use the phone? I need to call my parents and tell them not to come." "Oh, Clementine, I think it's a little late for that," said Mrs. Rice. She showed me her watch and then called out, "Take your places, people. 5 minutes to showtime." Everybody ran to their places. I ran to the curtains and peeked out. Every seat in the audience was filled. Oh my gosh, every seat in the audience was filled. Margaret's teacher clapped her hands for attention. "Before we get started," she said, "I just want to thank all of you for being part of the show. Each and every one of you is helping to raise money for the big school trip next year, except Clementine." Okay, fine. She didn't really actually say except Clementine, but you could see everyone was thinking it. Just then, the secretary came over and handed her a note. Oh my goodness," she cried. She jumped up out of her seat faster than I thought a grown-up could, or should. "Oh my goodness gracious, it's now. My daughter's having her baby, my first grandchild." "Go," said Mrs. Rice. "It's all right. We can handle the show. Just go be with your daughter." "Oh, thank you," Margaret's teacher said, and then she left so fast. She really did lose one of her bobby pins. It didn't look like lightning, though. It just looked like a bobby pin falling to the floor. "Wow," I said to Mrs. Rice. "So now you have to run the whole entire show by yourself." "No, not by myself," Mrs. Rice said. "I've an assistant, and that's you." "Me? Oh, no, I can't." "You can, and I'm certainly not doing this alone." No, I really can't. I don't pay attention, remember?" "Clementine, you do pay attention. Not always to the lesson in the classroom, but you notice more about what's going on than anyone I know, and that's exactly what I need tonight." "I don't think that's a very good idea at all." "Well, I do think it's a good idea. I'll prove it to you." Principal Rice called over one of the hula hoopers. "Hillary, what's the second act after intermission?" Hillary looked around. "I don't have a program," she said. "Do you want me to go get one?" Mrs. Rice told her, "No, thanks." Then she turned to me. "Clementine, what's the second act after intermission?" "Caleb from the 4th grade is going to burp the Star-Spangled Banner," I told her. "Does he need any props?" she said. Does he need any props? Yes, a 2-liter bottle of root beer. How long will it take? 41 seconds, 48 if he has to stop to drink extra soda at the Rocket's red glare part. "I rest my case," Principal Rice said. She pointed a no-buts finger at the empty director chair. "When a principal orders you to do something, it's impossible to refuse. Some part of you always wants to give in." So I climbed into the chair. "Open the curtains," Principal Rice said. and the worried scribbling feeling exploded all throughout my body. All right, we are on to chapter 9. Well, you would think those kids had never had a rehearsal. First thing, all dozen Doozies cartwheeled off the edge of the stage. Well, except for one girl who forgot to move at all. Maria and Morris Boris Norris from my class went on next, and they cartwheeled right off the stage too. Nobody had to go to the emergency room, though, and the audience thought the whole thing was supposed to happen that way, so it was okay. The next act was the O'Malley twins. Willie had convinced Willie not Lily had convinced Willie not to do the thing with his lunch and to play a duet on the piano with her instead. But when Lily got up to the mic to announce the act, she got so nervous she threw up. I looked at Willie, sitting on the piano. Willie does everything Lily does, and sure enough, he was getting ready. "Not on piano!" I yelled, just in time. Then I ran over and I closed the curtains quick, so the whole audience wouldn't get started too. When the janitor came running out to clean everything up, I had a good idea. Send Sydney out right now in front of the curtains," I told Mrs. Rice. "Why? There's no microphone out there." "That's okay. Sydney's really, really loud, and she's going to recite a poem, so there's no cartwheeling. She's just standing still. Besides, she's got really skinny feet, so she can fit out there if she stands sideways." So Sydney went on stage and stood sideways and yelled her poem. By the time she was done, the stage was all mopped up. Next came the Hula Hoopers, and they completely forgot what I told them about stopping. The music ended, but they just kept on going. Finally, I had to close the curtains to pull them off the stage so the jump ropers could go on. The jump ropers must have figured that if the Hula Hoopers didn't have to stop at the end of the music, neither did they. So I had to close the curtains on them too. Then came Margaret. She did fine at the walking on stage time thing, which not everybody did. But just as she got to the microphone, Alan took a picture of her from the audience, which was a bad mistake. Whenever anyone takes a picture of Margaret that she isn't expecting, she freezes. She said it's the horror of not knowing if she looks perfect or not, which I don't understand, because Margaret always looks perfect. No matter, there she was, frozen on the stage, with her mouth hanging open. For one tiny second, a little part of me thought, good, no showing off for you tonight. But then my empathetic part took over. I ran over to where Margaret could see me, and I waved until I got her eyes to unfreeze. I pointed to my hair and pretended to brush it. Margaret nodded like a robot. She turned to the audience. "First, always brush your hair, even if it's cut off like mine." She looked back at me. I pretended to do up some buttons, and then I pointed to my right. "Always make sure you're buttoned up right," Margaret told the audience. Then I lifted my foot and crossed my fingers over my sneaker. "Never wear green sneakers," Margaret said. "Green sneakers are the worst." Then she shook herself, as if she'd been asleep. She went closer to the mic. "Wait a minute," she said. "I was just kidding about that one. You can wear any color sneakers you want, and green is the most fashionable of all." She zoomed me a smile so huge that all her teeth bracelets sparkled like diamonds in the spotlight. I zoomed her one back, except with no teeth bracelets, because I don't have them yet. After that, shush, Margaret was okay. I went back and climbed up. Sorry, my dogs are barking. Come here. After that, I went back and climbed up on the director's chair, and Principal Rice gave me a huge smile too. She leaned over and said, "Come here. I have the answer for you now, Clementine, about why you can't have a substitute." "Shh. Because there's no substitute for you. You are one of a kind." "Stop." And that's when I realized I didn't have the worried feeling anymore. Instead, I had the proud feeling, like the sun was rising inside my chest. The proud sun-rising feeling stayed with me all through the rest of the show. And no matter what went wrong, which was plenty, Mrs. Rice and I just fixed it. Finally, we got to the last act, which was Joe and Buddy. Joe blew one note into his harmonica, and Buddy started howling. The audience went wild for them and kept calling for more, which was good, because Buddy kept howling as if he'd been waiting for this all his life. I felt a little jealous thinking about how great Spinach would have been up there with that fancy leash and how much the audience would have loved my act too, especially my parents. Now that the last act was over, I guess they were out there in the audience going, "Hey, wait a minute, where's our daughter?" Mrs. Rice and I closed the curtains and herded all the kids back onto the stage the way we had practiced. Then she opened the curtains again and everybody took their bows and only a few kids cracked their heads together. Mrs. Rice and I stepped back into the wings and climbed up on our chairs to watch. The audience kept smiling and clapping, and the kids kept smiling and bowing, and I was mostly happy, even though a little part of me was sad. Someday, I'd like to know what it feels like to have people clapping for me, too. "We did it," I said to Principal Rice. "It's over, and we did it." "Yes, indeed we did," said Principal Rice, "but it's not quite over. I have one more thing to do." Then she got off her chair and went on stage to join the crowd of kids. I heard her take the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to Talentpalooza, Night of the Stars. And now I would like to introduce the person who made it all possible, our very talented director. Without her, we would have no show here tonight." So Margaret's teacher had come back. It was good news babies could be born so fast, in case I ever decided to have one, which I will not. Mrs. Rice came over and put her hand on the side curtain. I jumped off the director's chair to make room for Margaret's teacher, even though I still didn't see her anywhere. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mrs. Rice said, "please give a big round of applause for," she pulled open the curtain, "Clementine." I was so surprised. I just stood there staring. All the fourth graders and third graders were staring back at me with thank you eyes and big smiles. Then they started clapping, regular at first, but then harder and harder. Pretty soon, they were clapping so hard that I was afraid some of the skinnier kids would break their wrists. Then the audience started clapping like crazy too, and it seemed they were never going to stop. The sound grew so loud, it practically peeled the ears right off my head. But I didn't care, because now I did know what it felt like to have people clapping for me. G-O-O-D, good. Chapter 10. On the way home, my mother kept shaking her head from being so astonished. "I can't believe you kept that secret all week, honey. You were so amazing." My dad caught my ear in the mirror and winked. "She's even more amazing than you know," he told my mother. "Yep, we have a very talented daughter here. Sport, we are so proud of you." Then he looked over at my mom and raised his eyebrows. She nodded and smiled. "Are you tired, Clementine?" she asked. "Or do you think you could stay up a little later than usual?" "I'm not tired," I said. "Do you need me to spy on the sitter, make sure she doesn't smoke cigars, or order things from the shopping channel? Do you think she's making private phone calls to Australia? I might be a private detective when I grow up." "No," said my dad. "The sitter's fine. We were wondering if you wanted to come to dinner with us at the Ritz instead." "Really?" I asked. "What about the peanuts?" Usually, when my parents go out, it's my job to make sure the babysitter doesn't bring any peanuts and leave them around. Broccoli is allergic, and if he even has one tiny peanut, he might have to go to the hospital with his neck all blown up or something. "We'll talk to the sitter, Sport," my dad said. "I don't know," I said. "My brother's never been left with a sitter without me to save his life." "It'll be all right, Clementine," my mom said. "We can trust the sitter to remember. We'd really like you to come. After all, we wouldn't even be going if it wasn't for you." So I said okay. And we went home, and my parents got more dressed up. I didn't, because I already looked so great. My mom put on her new shoes, and I thought my dad was going to hurt his head from smacking it so many times saying wow. When the babysitter came, my parents told her all about the peanuts, and then I told her too. Then my dad looked at his watch and said, "We have reservations, so goodbye." So we said goodbye. But when we got to the lobby, I couldn't leave. "Wait here." I hurried back to our apartment, got one of my mom's permanent markers, and wrote on my brother's foreheads, "No peanuts for me," in big blue capital letters. Then I felt all right. On the way to the restaurant, my parents asked me what I wanted for dinner. They always do this, so I don't have to look at a menu. and have the not choosing problem. A hamburger and mashed potatoes, I said. I'm on it, said my dad, and he was. My parents ordered food I had never heard of. Then the waiter said, and for the young lady, which was me. My dad ordered some more food I had never heard of, but when it came, it was a hamburger and mashed potatoes. Excuse me, I said very politely. May I also order some crackers? The waiter shook his head. Sadly, there are no rich crackers at the Ritz. It is one of the deepest mysteries of the universe. I didn't want him to feel embarrassed about that, so I told him I still liked his restaurant. And I think you're a really good waiter, too. Very empathetic. Which he was, because all night long, he figured out everything I was going to want, and I never had to go to the counter to ask for more anything, even ketchup. For instance, exactly when we were all done with our meal, I was wondering about dessert, and it magically appeared. I recommend 3 desserts tonight, he said. The Boston cream pie, the creme brulee, and the velvet chocolate cake are all especially good. I could see my parents thinking, oh no, here comes the choosing thing. But while the waiter was describing the desserts to us, his pencil drifted down to my menu and tapped one of the desserts for just an instant. I looked up and he winked. I'll have the velvet chocolate cake, I said. My parents made I don't believe it faces at each other. Then they ordered the 2 other desserts. My dad was creme brulee, which is French for vanilla custard that's been blasted on the top with a blowtorch. I am not even kidding about that. My mother's was the Boston cream pie, which came direct and decorated with clementine slices. The clementine, said the waiter, is the sweetest fruit, is it not? My mother laughed and nodded at me. I've always thought so. She took one bite of her dessert and then said, I just can't do it. I'm too full. My dad took one bite of his dessert and he said, me too, I am stuffed. Then they both pushed their plates over to me. So there I was at the Ritz No Crackers restaurant with 3 desserts. I think this is the luckiest day of my life, I told my parents. Then my mother whispered, take off your sneakers. So I did, and then secretly, under the table, she took off her purple dragonfly, not very sensible wow shoes, and slid them over to me. And for the rest of the meal, I wore them, which nobody knew because I kept them under the tablecloth, even when the waiter came over to bring me some more whipped cream. Okay, fine. When the waiter came over to bring me more whipped cream, it is possible that one of the dragonflies was peeking out. Oh, the end. What a great book. I hope you guys enjoyed The Talented Clementine. I'm going to read you some more soon, so wherever you are, have a wonderful rest of your day or night, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay.